From time to time, you might come across some unexpected stuff when you play video games. Secret of Mana, for example, is a fantasy action RPG and it still has a functioning metro station deep inside the Sunken Continent. Now that one might be in plain sight, but the game also has more obscure references that are not so easy to spot. Like a nod to this 1963 Japanese horror movie about a mutated monster mushroom on a deserted island.
What?
Yep. That's actually in the game, so today I will show you a couple of weird references I bet you didn't know existed in Secret of Mana. And I will start with a group of villains that I can totally relate to. The Scorpion Army. Now, calling the Scorpion Army an actual army is also a bit generous, because it's really just 3 characters. A scantily dressed woman and her 2 long-limbed minions. And yeah, the female boss of the gang really likes to show a lot of skin. To be fair though, that's still nothing compared to some of the armor pieces you can buy for your girl Prim. Anyway, the Scorpion Army shows up numerous times during your playthrough, and each time they have a new plan to take over the whole world. But to be honest, some of their schemes are even not that bad. I mean, capturing the Spirit of Fire and putting it in an oven to create a well-temperatured and lucrative resort in the Ice Country is some creative business thinking. However, every single plan of course fails spectacularly, partly because of your heroic intervention, but partly also because of the gang's own incompetence, which might remind you of another smart-ass trio from the Pokémon series.
Jesse!
James.
But the Pokémon anime released years after Secret of Mana, so Jesse, James and Meowth were clearly not the template. Instead, the Scorpion Army was directly inspired by the Doronbo Gang, a group of villains from the 70s anime Yataman, and there are at least 3 similar design aspects that give it away. First, the Doronbo Gang also consists of a trio of smart-ass villains, a scantily dressed female leader and 2 subordinate henchmen, although only one of them looks like the long-limbed minions from the Scorpion Army. Second, the gang always comes up with a new scheme to acquire loads of cash and mysterious artifacts in a dubious way. And their plans are of course ultimately foiled by the series' 2 protagonists. But their own incompetence usually also plays a part. And third, the Doronbo gang loves to use over-the-top robots to fight against the 2 heroes. A strategy that sounds familiar, but each fight of course ends in exactly the same way. So I think the resemblance is kind of obvious, but because the Scorpion Army never really poses a legitimate threat to you as a player, they act more like a goofy nuisance and add some form of comic relief to the game, which I appreciate once in a while. And what I also appreciate is another character that serves as your favorite and most comfy way to travel long distances. And no, I'm not talking about the Cannon Brothers. They offer the least comfy way. Instead, I'm of course talking about your lovable white dragon Flammie, who flies you first class wherever you want to go in Mana Land. Now, as a German, I recognize the concept of a white dragon flying the protagonist across the land from the 1984 fantasy movie The Never-Ending Story. However, in the movie Falcor looks more like a dog than a dragon, with a long furry body, flappy ears and big puppy eyes. But in the original novel, he really is described like a traditional Eastern dragon. So Flammie in Secret of Mana was clearly inspired by the book. Also, in the book, Atreyu first saves Falcor from the clutches of an evil creature, a plot point that is entirely absent in the movie, and in similar fashion, you first have to rescue Flammie from the Great Viper in the Upper Highlands. Now, once Flammie joins you on your quest, you can immediately spot another weird reference to something completely unrelated. So when you open the world map, you will notice a small grey pixel in the upper right corner of the screen, and you might rightfully assume it's just a graphics glitch. But that's not the case, and if you fly to the spot, you will find a strange structure in the ocean that looks like a human face. And there's even a second one staring at you from the mountains near Southtown. And no, this is not Andros from Starwing. This is actually a reference to the face on Mars. So in 1976, the space orbiter Viking 1 took some low-resolution photos from Mars' surface. And on one of them you could see a strange structure that looked like a human face, sparking all sorts of theories about alien life. Now that might sound exciting and terrifying at the same time, but better images later showed that the structure really is natural and only looks like a face due to specific lighting and shadow effects. But this is not the only reference on the overworld waiting to be discovered, which brings me to this small hexagonal island, the Turtle Isle. And the name is to be taken literal because the island does not only look like a turtle, it actually is a freaking turtle. Now the concept of an island on a giant turtle occurs in many different mythologies, and it also made it to Japanese gardening, where elements that resemble a big turtle symbolize longevity and good fortune. Fittingly, the inhabitants on Turtle Isle in Secret of Mana live a long and peaceful life, to the point of being completely bored because nothing ever happens on this secluded paradise. So after all, the people still have something to complain about. But although Turtle Island doesn't play a major role in the game's plotline, you can still get one important item on here. The Sea Hare's tail, which is somehow needed to restore water in the nearby desert village. Now I always wondered why the developers chose such a strange item, and not like a decanter of endless water for example. The thing is, a sea hare's tail can actually refer to completely different things. On one hand, a simple hare's tail would be a scut from a big rabbit, but a sea hare is a type of slug living underwater, which doesn't even have a tail. On the other hand, a hare's tail can also refer to a type of grass that thrives in dry, sandy environments. The grass gets its name from the scud-like fluffy seed at the end of the stalks, and according to the merchant who gives you the item, it is abundant on Turtle Island. But whatever the game is talking about, none of this explains how the sea hare's tail actually brings all the water back. That's a little far-fetched if you ask me. And what also seems far-fetched is that the friendly mushrooms in the kingdom of Matango were once humans, which were infected and transformed by a mutagenic monster fungus. That is, until you realize that Matango is actually the name of a 1963 Japanese horror movie where exactly that happens. Now in the West, the movie might be more commonly known as The Attack of the Mushroom People, and it was directed by no other than Ishiro Honda, that one legendary director who co-created the kaiju genre with a big radioactive lizard. Yeah, I bet all of us have seen at least one movie where Godzilla forcefully redesigns a big city. But Matango is a little different. In this film, a group of nerds shipwreck on a deserted island, and once their food supply runs low, they start eating some strange mutated mushrooms, which is of course a brilliant idea. So everyone gets the fungal scabies and they slowly turn into toadstools. Remember this the next time you go to sleep in Fang Castle. Now I can't say for sure if a catastrophic event like that also happened in Secret of Mana, but it's not like catastrophic events are anything new in this game, as the story features an advanced civilization in the past, which brought about its own downfall by angering the gods. And that's a straight up reference to the legendary city of Atlantis. Now according to Plato, Atlantis was a powerful and wealthy empire that existed somewhere around 12,000 BC. But you can imagine what happens when people get rich. They become greedy as fuck, which angered the gods, and the empire was destroyed overnight in a single cataclysmic event. That's basically one-to-one what happened in the past in Secret of Mana. And honestly, I'm glad that it did, because the soundtrack playing on the Sunken Continent is purely epic and still gives me goosebumps all over the place. Yeah, still works every time. And what also still works are these leftover devices on the lofty mountains. Veedio Orbs. Yep, the game straight up references our beloved VHS tapes in the form of orbs that were once used to record sound and moving images. And the developers even took it one step further and filled the orbs with more references to our own world. Like the TV show Jeopardy and Abraham Lincoln. And speaking about references to our own world, there is of course this functioning metro station deep inside the Sunken Continent, adequately filled with the most common passengers. And I thought I could escape our world by playing video games. So if you want to occasionally escape into the objectively better world of bits and bytes, you can subscribe to my channel and don't miss any of my future uploads. And if you really want to help me out, you can subscribe as a channel member and gain access to an increasing amount of custom emojis. Channel members will of course also get my full attention in the comment section. Anyway, stay tuned and don't eat radioactive mushrooms because this is to be continued. Thanks for watching.